as Italy triumphed in a high-stakes hostage diplomacy dispute. An Italian journalist caught in the middle of a diplomatic battle between Iran and the U.S. has been released from prison and sent home. After meeting incoming U.S. President Trump at Mar-a-Lago just days ago, was Italian Prime Minister Meloni able to negotiate a delicate deal that met demands for Cecilia Sala's release, while keeping ties with Washington and Tehran in check. I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. Facing vague charges of violating the laws of the Islamic Republic, Italian journalist Cecilia Sala was arrested December 19th and jailed in Tehran's notorious Evin prison. Meanwhile, a Swiss-Iranian engineer, whom Washington wants to charge with terrorism, sits in detention in Italy, arrested 3 days before Salah on behalf of the U.S. Now, the general understanding was that Iran wanted Mohammed Abedini released in exchange for Salah, but that's where the simplicity ends. Now, Italy has had good relations with both Tehran and Washington, but it does have an obligation to extradite Abedini. Domestic pressure was building on Meloni to secure Salah's release, but after a surprise Mar-a-Lago visit to meet incoming U.S. President Trump, it's unclear what exactly was negotiated and at what cost. Here's a look.
3 weeks ago, Italian journalist Cecilia Sala, known for her current affairs podcasts and nearly 500,000 Instagram followers, was arrested in Iran while on assignment. Accused of violating the law of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Salah was held in Tehran's Evin prison, a facility notorious for tough conditions and for the detention of political prisoners. Many believed her incarceration was linked to the arrest of Mohammed Abedini, a Swiss-Iranian engineer detained in Italy 3 days earlier. But in a surprise decision on Wednesday, she was suddenly released and allowed to immediately fly back to Italy. Abedini was apprehended in Italy on a US warrant, accused of supplying components for Iranian drones, a charge tied to Iran's growing drone program. The arrest was met with outrage from Iran's leaders.
The act of creating a judicial framework to entrap Iranian nationals is not only illegal but also unethical and a violation of human rights. Therefore, our demand from other countries has been that they should not allow their bilateral relations with Iran to be influenced by the unlawful request of third parties.
Ahead of Salah's release, Meloni spent last weekend at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. Trump has previously praised Meloni for her hardline policies and leadership style.
She's fantastic. She is a fantastic leader and person.
And with President Joe Biden set to visit Italy this week, Meloni's star is rising both at home and abroad. She's become the figurehead of Europe's right-wing governments and clearly has the ear of the US President-elect Donald Trump. The swift repatriation of Cecilia Sala will not only cement her status, but is likely to give her a huge boost in popularity in Italy.
Well, joining me now to debate what the return of Cecilia Sala means to Italy, the U.S., and Iran are from Palermo, international affairs analyst Valerio Bordonaro, from Leeds, UK, senior lecturer in Middle Eastern Studies at the Australian National University, Salah, and from Indianapolis, associate professor at the Hamilton Lugar School of Global and International Studies at Indiana University, Hussein Banai. Thanks all so much for being with me. Valerio, first I need you to explain what Salah's freedom means to Italians. You know, she's little known outside the country, mostly because she's only really accessible to Italian speakers. But inside Italy, how much had her detention become, a pivotal nationwide issue?
It was indeed, and it is indeed a pivotal thing for the Italian national audience, as Cecilia Sala is a young journalist, only 29 years old, and she is a vocal advocate for gender equality and very much involved in conflict like Ukraine, Afghanistan, and now she was in Iran. The entire political spectrum of Italy expressed solidarity to Cecilia Sala. This is sort of a surprise for us, So it meant that the government was fully on the story. And if we read the reactions also from the oppositions, all of them, so the Democratic Party leader Elly Schlein also complimented to the government. So it was a national issue and not the usual polarization of the political spectrum.
Not the usual polarization. Well, that's good news for Giorgia Meloni. I mean, how is she being viewed right now?
Well, very good, very good. Everyone is expressing solidarity to the government. Everyone is congratulating with the government. More with Giorgia Meloni than with the leader of Forza Italia and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Antonio Tajani. So this was, for sure, a winning move for Giorgia Meloni, for the entire government, but especially for Giorgia Meloni, that was seen also a few days ago in Lago with Donald Trump. So the two facts are, in a way, linked.
Okay, but we still don't know what has been compromised or not compromised in whenever negotiations went on behind the scenes. So is there anything that concerns you about what was done or given to secure Cecilia Sala's release?
Okay, actually, at the time being, we know nothing about it. But the hypothesis that went out in Italian media is that Giorgia Meloni went to the United States for a flash trip, and in that flash trip, she negotiated with the Trump administration the release of Iranian prisoners in Italy that were asked for extradition to the United States. Is the case of engineer Abedini. But there's also something that went out on a possible agreement between Italy and SpaceX for critical communication of the government. So, you know, of course, we will never get this information, and we will not get this information right now. But yes, we're talking about a triangulation of deals.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk's name, some would say strangely, came up somewhat often in this conversation, which many thought he shouldn't have anything to do with. But you mentioned the SpaceX potential deal there. I'll be looking closely to see how that unfolds, because it's an interesting angle. But let me move on now. Alam, I mean, what does this say to you, about the dynamics between all three countries, as well as the issue of hostage diplomacy? I mean, has it been fully legitimized here, and is that okay?
Well, the hostage diplomacy has been practiced by the Islamic Republic since 1979, when they have seized the American embassy and held the American diplomats for 444 days for political reasons, of course. So the hostage diplomacy has been practiced since then. However, since 2018, when President Trump has withdrawn from the so-called the nuclear deal, it has been actually increased dramatically. Iran has used this hostage diplomacy in order to enhance its bargaining chip with the Western powers, particularly United States. So what happened in the past few days has nothing to do with Italy. It's more about Iran and America. It's more about Tehran and Washington. However, it just happened that an Iranian citizen has been arrested in Italy, and he was, or he is actually, threatened to be returned to United States, and therefore we see that the Italian Prime Minister needs to go to California to meet President Trump to deal with the issue. So we see that it has nothing to do with the Iran-Italy relationship. It's more about Iran and United States. It's more about the bargaining chip that Iran lacks when it comes to deal with the United States. The United States detains Iranian citizens anywhere in the world. They can freeze Iranian or freeze Iranian assets anywhere in the world, and Iran has no bargaining chip, no bargaining power in order to deal with the United States. But this probably immoral, however, it's internationally somehow successful acts. We see in the past that Iran could reach the deal with the United States and Western powers
Okay.
when it comes to the hostage diplomacy.
Okay. Hussein, would you agree there, or do you think Alam is underplaying the Tehran-Rome relationship here? Because there is a relationship, and because Europe generally doesn't have as tough a stance against Tehran as the United States does, Italy engages in a lot more, bilateral relations with Iran than other countries, particularly the United States, does. So is there something more to be said about the Iran-Italian relationship?
Well, I would fully agree with what Alam just said. I think it's very accurate to portray hostage-taking and involuntary detentions as a central pillar of Iranian foreign policy toolkit that this regime has especially been very well practiced in since 1979, as Alam mentioned. But I do think in this particular episode, we have really an interesting, instructive case in that you had the detainment and the quick release that really demonstrates the changing bargaining dynamics between Iran and Western countries. Iran has been very good at manipulating, especially left of center or centrist governments in the West. And now we have a moment in global politics where there's a realignment between far more nationalist, far more assertive, far more zero-sum type of mindsets dominating Western politics. And I think the Meloni-Trump partnership here is one that the Islamic Republic very quickly calculated it would not be to its interest to continue on down this path of kind of a much more complex tit for tat. That it was going to probably cost it more, that it was worth going down this path. And I think because there was no really substantial charges whatsoever against Cecilia Sala here, they were especially in a tougher position. But in the past, they've been able to manipulate similar kinds of cases, involving journalists who are citizens of Great Britain, France, Germany, Canada, much more effectively than was the case here. So clearly, we're in the speculation zone. We don't know exactly what was bargained here that really quickly resulted in the outcome here. But it's a different change game for the Islamic Republic. It really has them in a very tough corner right now.
Okay, well, let me ask Valerio the same question. If you think at all the relationship between Rome and Tehran is maybe being underplayed here, that there is something stronger in this, and whether Meloni was actually coordinating long-term strategy on Iran with Donald Trump back at Mar-a-Lago, that could entail something that Italy could, you mentioned some of the deals that may have gone into this, something that might entail a bigger place for Italy.
Well, actually, I agree with the two previous speakers. The role of Italy is limited here. It's a match between the United States and Iran with the big figures of the conflicts in the Middle East. Italy is part of it, but I would say just accidentally. They found this Italian vocal journalist that could have been a good diplomatic leverage to get something. We don't know exactly what. At the moment, we talk about the case of Abedini, but there may be other Iranian citizens detained by Western countries or from the United States. So my opinion is that the role of Italy is just accidental here.
It's somewhat ironic, though, that it's been such a win for Giorgia Meloni, when actually all of you are agreeing that Italy doesn't play a fundamental role in the overall relationship. Still, it's been a triumph for her at home.
Yes, totally. A total triumph. A total triumph that gives a confirmation that the fact that this special relationship with Donald Trump is a more powerful, is a more vocal position for Italy, that Italy can have, again, a role in international affairs. Of course, I think this is all the facade of the thing, and it's most probably that Giorgia Meloni went to California for getting an approval of the strategy. But at the same time, we have to remember that Italy has long diplomatic ties with Iran. So at middle management and middle officers, something can move more easily if Italy is involved.
Okay.
If country like that is not like the point of the Western society. Italy has always been a little bit different from the other countries. It's not France, it's not the United States, it's not UK, of course. So in this case, maybe the arrest of Salah was a little bit of a mistake from the Iranian perspective, and at the same time, everything went out in an enormous triumph for Giorgia Meloni and the relationship with Donald Trump.
So, Alan, let me ask you, at this point now for Donald Trump, how much does Iran and Abedini, for that matter, actually matter to Trump himself? And does it worry you that he has moved to a more bellicose tone recently? You know, before he was all about ignoring the rest of the world, America first, and now he's even threatening to take back the Panama Canal, for example, even if he has to use military force. So, I mean, what do you think Iran means to Trump going forward? Is it still a focus?
Well, of course, Trump is the big challenge for Tehran in many years to come. As I've said before, Iran has very little to do with the United States policies towards Iran and the so-called maximum pressure policy. Iran has been using these kind of activities either through its agencies in the region, its proxies in the region. To undermine the United States' interest in the region, or to use a diplomatic kind of channels. And therefore, we see actually in this particular case, we see that the intelligence channels also been involved. They know that Trump is coming soon, and it's all about United States. And if this lady should be released, it should be now before the Trump is back to the office. So therefore, we see that this time it just happened so quickly. We don't know whether Mr. Abedini will be released or not, or when. But I'm sure that they have agreed on something behind the curtains. And this is something new, because in other cases like Nazanin Zaghari, it took many years for British politicians to take her back home. In case of Jason Rezaian and Washington Post journalist, it took more or nearly 2 years. Roxana Sabri, nearly 4 months. And this time we see that such a release means that there is something urgent about Trump's coming back to the office quite soon. Therefore, we see that Tehran is actually successful in its bargaining, kind of this act of hostage diplomacy, if you like. Recently, also they were able to release $6 billion frozen in South Korean banks into Qatar, with the exchange of several hostages, American and Iranian or dual nationals. So the question is whether the Western powers should respond to such act or not. Whether this is moral, is it acceptable internationally or not, is something that the human rights activists should actually answer.
Right. Well, I mean, Hussein, where do you think Trump will take these types of situation when he does take office? I mean, given especially, as I mentioned, the more kind of like bellicose tone he's been taking on certain foreign policy initiatives, before he's even taken office.
It's very hard to tell. I think Trump's unpredictability, his frankly very erratic and unsystematic approach to sensitive foreign policy portfolios like Iran really has the Iranian government in a bind. They can not really calculate with him the same way they're used to with previous administrations, both Republican and Democratic. And that was evident last time he was president. I think Trump to this day is the one US president who inflicted the greatest shock to the Iranian body politic when he authorized the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, Iran's head of the Quds Force and one of the most senior political figures in the Iranian regime. And that is still very much echoing in the ears of the Iranian leaders. They're very extremely nervous about what his approach will be because they know there is no pattern to it. I don't think Donald Trump personally really takes an interest on the morality or amorality of hostage taking. He's very interested in a very transactional style of geopolitics. He wants, at the end of the day, the United States to come on top, to have the advantage in any kind of difficult situation that it finds itself in, be it in the Middle East or other theaters where Iran, Russia, China, and other countries that have competing interests with the United States are involved. And I think his rhetoric is one thing that has, when it comes to the case of Iran, been specifically backed with lethal action, as the Soleimani case demonstrated.
Valerio, let me come back to you. And if we turn our attention back toward Italy, do you think Giorgia Meloni has found a sort of kindred spirit in Donald Trump? And do Italians want that? And furthermore, I mean, is she, some have speculated, she will somehow become the voice of Donald Trump in Europe because they do have that special relationship?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Donald Trump is the first international leader that is not blaming Giorgia Meloni for being Giorgia Meloni. If you imagine what is the situation within the European institution when they meet at the European Council, normally Giorgia Meloni is seen as the only fascist of Europe. The other countries like the Eastern European countries or the Netherlands are small countries, so Meloni is considered as the strange one of the group. While with Donald Trump, the relationship is totally perfect. They like each other, they appreciate the way of doing things and of being very pragmatic and practical. So I see a very strong possibility that Giorgia Meloni will become the advocate of the United States during this second Trump presidency. Yes, this is the case.
And Italians want that?
I don't think so. Italians are very much focused on Italy and European affairs. And as much as I can understand from reading the news and listening to people, Italy is not that much interested in the United States anymore. It was the case also with Biden. Biden administration was not on the first pages of newspaper anymore, and with Trump it's going to be the same. I think the last enthusiastic presidency that was seen from Italy was the first Barack Obama presidency, and then for the rest, the focus is totally different.
So, okay, let me ask Alam quickly. We're down to our last few minutes, by the way. So just quickly, I mean, with the mention of Joe Biden there, I mean, he does have a coming visit to Italy. What will that mean in the context of all of this? Is there any substance to it?
Well, Biden it's gone. Actually, we should think of Trump, and Trump has, in his first 4 years term, actually confronted European powers, especially when it comes to the NATO membership. The Europeans have resisted in his first term. It seems that Europe has changed and Trump is changing too. And European powers have no other option but to comply to United States, particularly considering the Russians' occupation of Ukraine, considering the Middle East kind of insecurity and instability. And there are so many other stuff, the economic issues and the China's kind of rise of power will leave European powers with no other option but to comply to the next 4 years, at least, with Trump and to deal with him. This is particularly important since Iran is also becoming a threat, or is perceived a threat by Europeans and, of course, by the United States. Iran is the threshold nuclear power. Iran is powerful when it comes to its missile technology. It's invaded Israel twice, at least in the past few months or so, and therefore the Europeans will see and will face and encounter many challenges that they need United States so badly.
Okay.
And I think Italy will have no other option but to comply.
Okay. Hussein, we just have less than a minute left. Just go ahead with your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think we actually, Biden's exit here might be somewhat important to note because we don't know exactly what the nature of back channel talks between Iran and the United States have been since the election. We know that the Iranian officials have been in contact with people inside the Trump camp, especially Elon Musk, 2 days after the election, met with the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations. There's a lot happening in behind the curtains that we'll soon find out how it will all shake out and materialize as Trump takes the oath of office and what happens in the first 100 days.
Okay, Hussein, that will have to be the last word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of you so much for being with us and thank, of course, our viewers for tuning in as well. Remember, you can follow us on X and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.